Why don't you put on a show? You know what we want, you do it. Shall I put on my own show? I hope I don't get banned for doing this video, but I've just returned from the Campervan Show in Exeter, and I've got to be honest with you, I was very disappointed. But I'm not alone in this, and some of you actually think that I should put a show on myself. Do you think I should? You know, I was driving up to the show and I was thinking, this is actually the only show that we've got in Devon and Cornwall. I paid for a ticket and I hope to see lots of campervans, parts, accessories, components, and speak to lots of experts. Perhaps I could have a nice cup of coffee and chat campervans. Instead, it was like an indoor car park. There was no markings to actually decipher where vehicles were. They seemed to be completely randomly parked. You know, no separation from where one stand started and the other one finished or next one started. It was proper chaotic, and exhibitors were just having to make the most which they had. And I will add at this point that it wasn't the exhibitors' fault. You know, there were some nice familiar faces there. I had a chat with Vanworks and Dormobile, Temploway campers, Cool Whip campers, Cooler commercials, tailored campers, you know, so there were some good people there. And they just had to deal with what they had. And I had some really good conversations, like you might have seen in the previous video. And some of these conversations were actually with you guys who stopped me for a chat, and your thoughts were very similar to mine. You know, if you wanted to buy a van, then it was absolutely great. You know, there was loads of them, lots of different layouts, various different styles. And they weren't all brand new like you see at the NEC. So it did cater for those with much lower budgets. But there was a lot missing though, more of which I'll come into in a moment. But this is where your disappointment was. You know, there was no real parts and accessories, no components to help you with that self-built campervan. And it was said by, well, two people. One called it a car boot sale, and the other one said it's more like a jumble sale. You know, there was no atmosphere, no vibe, no music. There was no industry talks, no expert presentations, and no real component traders. One chap specifically said in relation to this that he was looking to buy some van shades, but van shades weren't there. Now, he could have probably approached Temploway or Cool Whip Campers, because I know they do van shades, but the point was he was hoping that there was going to be lots of these different component stands, i.e. like van shades, but there weren't. There was just none of that kind of thing there. One couple I spoke to said to me, why don't you put on a show? You know what we want, you do it. And I did actually mention that to one of the other exhibitors, and they said, yeah, do it. We'd take a stand if you did a show. And that comment did get me thinking. You know, we do seem to be lacking a big show, a proper campervan show. Should I take up the challenge and fix it? You know, it makes no sense. Devon and Cornwall, you know, it is the spiritual home of the UK staycation. You know, we aren't just another holiday destination. We, being the southwest, are the most visited region in the UK. You know, there's over 15 million trips in 2024. You know, we've got more campsites down here per square mile than anywhere else in the UK. And during the summer, that our population, the campervan owners in our region, effectively doubles. So we've got the resident campervan owners, we've got the visiting owners. Why do we have to drive several hours to go and visit a great campervan show? You know, if you only do go to the shows locally, you might not realise what you're missing. And I want to explain to you what I mean about a great campervan show. You know, look at the NEC Motorhome and Caravan Show, or the Caravan Camping and Motorhome Show, because there are two. You've got the more kind of outdoory lifestyle one in February, and then you've got the much, much bigger one in October. And these shows aren't just a showroom, they are an experience. You know, it starts off as empty halls, but they are quickly transformed with well laid out exhibitor stands. The halls are carpeted, the lighting is professional, and it feels like a premium event. Well, because it is, and the people who actually exhibit there have to pay that premium. And okay, that all the vans that are there are meant to be brand new camper vans, so not going to be for everyone. But there are a lot to see, and it can give you inspiration for yours. You know, there are various component traders for power systems, batteries, control panels, blinds, vehicle trackers, air suspension, and a lot more to help you build your camper van, or maybe upgrade the one you've got. There are ranges of portable cookers, fridges, paddleboards, electric bikes, all from the major suppliers. And you can see most of the big awning manufacturers here as well, all having the exhibitions laid up, so you can actually go in them and find out which is going to be the best extension for you. You might regret it though, because it might not be a cheap experience, because there is lots to buy. You know, you could buy some tables and chairs for your van. There's lots of good stuff, even quality things for dogs, because dogs are an essential item of campervan van life. It isn't just what you can buy though, because you can test things as well. You know, if you've never driven a campervan or a motorhome before, you can get in one and try it out. Motorhome manoeuvring sessions with an instructor. See if you can handle a 7-metre rig before you buy it. Yeah, you don't want to buy it and then find out you can't do it. You know, towing experiences from Isuzu. And then even at the February show, there's a massive swimming pool. Not for swimming, but you can test out your paddleboards and your kayaks. You've got the Inspiration Theatre, where you've got various different guests who can provide you helpful information, telling their stories of what they've done on the travels, giving you hints and tips so you can have a better lifestyle yourself. And some of these are actually celebrities who enjoy the outdoor lifestyle. You know, because it is exactly that. It is a lifestyle choice. You know, these are big shows, and I really do always look forward to. The one in February is not far away, and I might have already booked my hotel. Another show to look out for is the big outdoor shows like Warner shows, or Out and About Live as they're actually now known. And again, there's lots of campervans to look at. And this time, they're not all going to be brand new, so possibly that a little bit easier on the wallet again. There is again lots of different parts and accessories to buy from well-known traders. There's loads and things going on. There's food and drink you can buy, but not only you can buy, but you can also have cookery lessons in the cookery theatre. You know, where chefs like Mark from Vanlife eats, he can cook your meals. You know, he can show you how you cook the meals on the appliances you've got in your campervan. You can learn from the advice centres. You can sit down, listen to the industry experts, listen to find out that helpful information, you know, a bit like which you've got at the NEC. Ask those burning questions you've got. You know, what's the point of a lithium battery, or should I do this or should I do that? The experts are there to help you. Additionally, at these shows, there is camping. You can stay overnight, stay for the whole weekend if you wish, mix with lots of other campers, enjoy the bars, the live music, or just chill out and relax on your own. There really is quite a lot going on, but you don't have to kind of be with everybody else. You can just go and you can just chill and just dream about all the nice campervans you might be buying the next day, and come on with a load of stuff which you didn't expect you're going to buy, because yeah, that never-ending wish list just grows and grows the more you go to these shows. It doesn't stop at those shows though. There are other festivals who've also got great traders in attendance. You know, the rapidly growing Dubbed Out Festival, who also have lots of other smaller events throughout the year. You know, they're massive in the Volkswagen scene, hence the name. These are really well attended festivals and shows if that's what you're into. But like I said, they've got the parts and stuff available. But they are all up north. Great places, the north. But how about a Dubbed Out Gone South? DOGS. Yeah, there's a bit of a ring to that. You know, you've also got Campermart in Telford, and this is the show where people really do get the inspiration for modified campers. You know, you can find those big wheels, slam suspension, those which are on air ride, or potentially those lifted vans which you've got the massive all-terrain tyres on them. It's a great show for looking how you can improve the aesthetics of your van. And I'm going to be there again this February. I look forward to seeing, hopefully, some of the new modified vans, the new Transporter. You know, these kind of shows and festivals are what we need down here in the southwest, specifically Devon and Cornwall. You know, a show that educates, entertains, and helps you build your van or find your dream van. So back to that question, shall I put on my own show? Well, I would like to say yes, but it isn't as easy as that, is it? You know, I know that running a show or a festival, it isn't just about renting a field and opening the gate and there you go, we'll sell a load of tickets. It does require massive infrastructure and careful planning. You know, there's the traffic management, security, toilets. Well, how are you going to cope with the food outlets, the traders? You know, and you're going to need a team for it all to work. I don't even really know what you need, so what chance have I actually got? You know, if I tried to do it, just this bloke with an idea, I'd end up making a lot of mistakes and not doing it right, and therefore creating probably another show which didn't appeal to people. You know, this isn't a job for an amateur. It is a job for the experts. And all that said, there is actually a show coming down to Cornwall next year. And it's the same people behind the Exeter one. I hope I don't get banned for doing this video, but the video really should be viewed from the perspective of, you know, how can we improve the show? You know, it could actually be of use. If I'm saying this is what people are saying, because it is what they're saying, have a think about it, make the changes, and, you know, you might be onto a winner. Anyway, this Cornwall show is at the Royal Cornwall County Showground from July the 24th to the July the 26th. And the venue's perfect. It is a brilliant location. It's kind of just like it's in Wadebridge, which is just on the near Padstow and all that kind of area. Absolutely brilliant. But the date isn't perfect. You know, that is the exact same weekend as the Dubbed Out Festival and also Bug Jam and some other gatherings as well. You know, and the point isn't necessarily that those are taking place, but the fact is that the traders that people want to see may already be somewhere else. You know, so even if the Cornwall venue is great, who's going to be there selling the parts? You know, if the big traders are elsewhere, the Cornwall show may not still have what you want. You know, we need a new plan. We need a show that doesn't clash with the established shows. And we need organisers to understand what people want. You know, the feedback which I had, it obviously wasn't from everybody. You know, it wasn't everybody's opinion. But it certainly did seem a common one. You know, before I even went to the show, people were saying, I'm not going because it's rubbish. So either let's change it, let's help to change it, or let's bring a new show and make it a show that people do want to attend. You know, it would be great if the big players did bring a show down here. The NEC show equivalent in Cornwall. Imagine if Dubbed Out Festival brought the community vibe to Cornwall. Or if Out and About Live brought their advice centres and cookery theatres to Wadebridge. There's certainly lots of good food places to be getting the ingredients from. How about late summer, the end of season party? You know, traders can be clearing some of the stock before winter, and before that they actually release the new stuff at the NEC in October. So, organisers, come on, Cornwall is waiting for you. Devon and Cornwall, but Cornwall is absolutely great. You know, what do you think? Would you buy a ticket for a show if it was in kind of late summer? Tell me what and who you would like to see there. Which traders would you want to see? Maybe we won't get a new one, but maybe we could help improve the one which we've got. You know, if you missed my videos on the NEC show, then you can have a look at those here. Take care, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.